Good morning. Jennifer Schorn, Bucks County District Attorney. Here with me to my left is Deputy Chief Jack Slattery of the Bucks County Detectives. To his right is Chief Deputy District Attorney Megan Hunziker, who's the Chief of our Investigative Grand Jury. To her right is Detective Timothy Johnson of the County Detectives. And to his right, finally, is the assigned prosecutor, Chief Deputy A.J. Garabedian. I'm here to report that Carlito Cortez, who is a part-time police officer with both the Langhorne Borough Police Department and the Yardley Borough Police Department, was arrested yesterday for a financial exploitation scheme involving a 76-year-old resident of Langhorne Borough. The allegations stem from a scheme that includes elements of a contractor fraud, romance scam, and theft by deception. This defendant used his position as a police officer to gain the victim's trust when he responded to her initial call where she reported that 2 heirloom pieces of jewelry were stolen from her home. He was assigned to the investigation, and as a result of that, in his position in an official capacity, he learned just how he learned about her wealth and her assets that she possessed, but he also gained insight into her vulnerability. During the course of the investigation, he took painstaking steps to gain her trust. And after he succeeded in gaining her trust, he used a calculated scheme to defraud the victim that took place over the course of several months. Actually, quite frankly, longer than that, years. This case is disturbing because someone in a position of trust and respect in the community, like a police officer, can never exploit that position. But this individual did just that with this victim. His end goal was to become the designated recipient of her estate. He succeeded when he surreptitiously had her sign a document she believed to be a medical power of attorney, when in fact it was a fraudulent last will and testament. His home was searched, a home where he resides with his wife, and in that home recently recovered were the original last will and testaments prepared properly and legally by this victim, where she bequeathed her estates to her family members. Again, as mentioned, this case is very unnerving because it destroys your trust in this position of authority that this individual held. I am so pleased to know that my colleagues took painstaking steps to investigate this matter, and they used the powers of the grand jury to assist them in that capacity. And they, honoring their oath and commitment to seek justice, demonstrate that nobody is above the law. It really does not get much worse than this. This defendant's actions are the definition of predatory and exploitative. And again, I just praise the work that was done, and I also commend the members of the Bucks County Investigating Grand Jury, because they serve in secret, and they serve for up to 2 years handling matters, sensitive matters like this, so that we can get justice for victims of crime. I'm happy to answer any questions you may have.
How did anyone find out about this incident?
I also have to praise the individuals who began to see some suspicious behavior, who then notified the authorities, and then the investigation ensued. And as you can see, this was a lengthy investigation because these crimes unfolded over the course of quite some time.
What individuals unfolded?
I'm not going to get into specifics at this juncture, but a number of individuals saw strange behavior, including, he was seeking only to obtain financial power of attorney and not medical for this victim, which was a clear flag, highly unusual. So some professionals noticed that this seemed to be exploitative. And again, I commend the community. That's such an important role for individuals who work in that capacity to see the flags, because certain individuals are vulnerable. This victim did not have immediate family members living with her or in the area, and so naturally, given her wealth and given her the limited relationship she had in the immediate area, made her vulnerable to someone who was going to prey upon her.
Did anyone at the Langhorne Police Department, any of his colleagues, come forward with any sort of observed suspicious behavior? Did anybody realize that this was going on?
We had full cooperation once the extent of this victimization was discovered. We had full cooperation. I will say, I think he was very calculated and very charismatic. So it's hard to believe that someone could do this under the color of his badge and authority and victimize in plain sight. I mean, he was staying at her home, arriving in a patrol car and wearing a police uniform day in and day out. And so pretty brazen, but we had full cooperation.
How was he able to do that? He was on duty in a car in uniform and he was hanging out at her house?
Keep in mind, initially it was under the guise of this investigation, which, by the way, was never solved. These heirloom pieces of jewelry were valued at $25,000 a piece. And under the guise of the investigation, that's how the initial contact was made. And then, quite frankly, at that point, he also claimed to be a contractor doing side work at her house. And we know that obviously was not the case. It was a traditional contractor fraud type scheme, but probably the most disturbing is the romance scheme.
Over the course of this, we believe this started in 2020.
Yes.
And then the grand jury is in 2024.
Yes.
Presentment comes back. So at what point is he no longer a police officer? At what point is he relieved of those duties there? We know in the middle of this he gets fired from the third job at the Warwick Towers. So at what point did the police department say, we're going to sever ties with you?
It was Langhorne Borough, and it was tricky in that, we have to be able to conduct these investigations, sensitive investigations of this nature, utilizing the powers of the grand jury, which allows us to convene in secret. So, there were certain things, and we had to make sure that the facts that we were hearing were accurate. So at some point when it was abundantly clear, that's when all the proper notifications were made. And I think it became abundantly clear to him that he was going to be facing criminal consequences, and he resigned, if I'm not mistaken.
So
He wasn't working for Langhorne Borough and you had mentioned...
And Yardley Borough.
Was he working for them both at the same time, or did he go from Yardley to Langhorne?
He was part-time for both, so he was working for both at the same time. I believe 10 years at Yardley Borough and 8 at Langhorne Borough.
So were you investigating him while he was still operating as a police officer?
There was a period of time where we were gathering information. Naturally, you don't presuppose where an investigation is going to go based on just what is initially reported. But there was a period of time, yes, and obviously we face that in many cases where there's this, I hate to say it, a sweet spot where you have to tell, someone now the investigation is a credible investigation.
Romance scheme? Can you tell me about that part?
Yeah, he had the victim believe that he loved her and that she expressed her love for him, and he exploited that. And victim discloses that he would only express his love when she would do things at his behest.
Was he married?
He is married. He is married. Also, there's another component where his mistress was hired. He had this victim hire her as a care provider, as a personal care provider, and brought her into the victim's home to provide care when in fact she was certainly not doing that and she was not qualified to do that. So that's a whole other added component as well.
Mistress?
His mistress.
He must have been charming.
Did the victim, did she have any sort of cognitive or mental impairment?
No, in fact, she's quite sharp. I believe the vulnerabilities, he obviously assessed first that she was, a wealthy individual and that she had no immediate family members in her day-to-day life. And so with that alone, it made her, unfortunately, an easy target for him and these romance scams, we see it all the time. They're so calculated in how they convince the victims that this is all done in the name of love.
If he was able to pull this off in that period of time, are you concerned that with his other job duties, there could be other folks out there that may now have information about him?
We are working to that end, and if obviously the media, we always appreciate the help you give us in having a broader voice, that if anybody believes they may be a victim, obviously we need to know that. But we are certainly aware of that concern, and we'll do whatever we can if in fact we receive credible information.
You mentioned a painstaking investigation, and I think you mentioned a red flag. How, and I can't give particular details, but I guess the general challenges of figuring out, is this just a guy who's helping a woman out, or is this criminal? What are the challenges there? How do you get over it?
Yeah, there are challenges, but I will say my colleagues did an amazing job in this investigation, and I commend also the grand jury who were so committed to this case in particular and all of their cases, but they did such an amazing, they took the painstaking steps to prove just how calculated this scheme was. So, but there are, certainly there were some challenges early on, but I believe, one of the things that came to light towards the end of the investigation, the search of his home with the original wills that he had no permission to have in his possession, but also was so confident as to not have destroyed them. where they were legitimate, authentic wills prepared by this victim.
Did she get heirlooms were stolen? What heirloom, like necklaces or were they?
We know that the initial report, not attributed to this defendant, were 2 rings valued each at $25,000. But in that initial contact with this officer, she indicated that she had multiple pieces of heirloom jewelry as well as antiques and valuables in her home. And so it was quite apparent that she was someone who had assets, had possessions that were of value. We don't know if any specific pieces were stolen by him, but we know that that clearly identified her as an easy mark.
Was the thief caught?
No, interestingly enough, that investigation never went anywhere.
Does he try to file the bogus will somewhere?
That I can't speak to at this point in time. I will say that we did not recover the bogus will. I will say the victim was really unbelievably astute in her account, her recollection of what occurred, and when she saw what she thought was a medical power of attorney being signed, she saw at the last minute that it was a last will and testament, and he refused to produce it for her. So we have not physically recovered that, but that's not an impediment in this prosecution.
But when you say that professionals noticed what he was doing, it sounds like he was trying to make some kind of formal filing, and someone said, whoa, who are you?
Yes.
Who are you to her?
Yes, an attorney, in fact, and trying to get her to give him financial power of attorney, but explicitly did not want medical power of attorney.
Words of advice for folks out there that have relatives that are living alone. I mean, he's a police officer, we're supposed to trust the police. But this happens with other people that aren't police officers, and people trust them.
Yeah, obviously, we have the finest men and women in law enforcement in Bucks County, but like in every profession, there are criminals who are walking among us, who are looking to use their positions in someone's community or in their community or in someone's life to exploit them. And we just have to be vigilant. For anyone of us who have cared for an elderly relative, this is alarming. I've been doing this job for 26 years now, and this was upsetting to me to see. And I'm just so grateful for the work our team did.
Could anyone else be charged? Was anyone helping him?
At this juncture, we don't have specific information as to that, but obviously, the investigation, and that's why I'm also so proud of my team, it doesn't stop until sentencing. So we continue to follow up on every lead, so time will tell, but at this juncture, we don't have enough information to indicate that.
Not the mistress that you mentioned, because she had some sort of knowledge of at least some of what was going on.
We're exploring, everybody's role still, but not at this juncture. This is what we have thus far, and this may be what we have. But he was very calculated at what he did, and so we look forward to making sure that this victim gets justice.
Does he have children?
I'm not going to speak to that.
What kind of penalty is he facing?
I didn't total the statutory maximums, but one of the crimes that is really kind of sends a message is official oppression, using his position as a police officer and using his official role to exploit this victim. There's theft by deception, there's securing documents by fraud, there's several counts of theft, and so we have not totaled the total statutory maximums. By and large, they're misdemeanor offenses, but nonetheless a serious matter.
Did you surveil him? And did your people have to surveil him while he was on duty? And secondly, did you at some point have to tell the chiefs where he's working, hey, we're looking at this cat?
Yeah, and that's as to the second part. I'm not going to answer the specifics as to our investigative tools. Some of them are explained in the affidavit, which is the grand jury presentment, but yeah, that's the tough part. These are good chiefs of police who had no idea. So he doesn't just victimize the victim, he victimizes the community and his coworkers, and quite frankly, the profession. It's a blemish on the profession and undeserved. So yeah, absolutely. Well, thank you for your time. I'm sorry.
What month and year was the theft reported, and what date did he leave the force?
The theft was reported, he began the theft investigation in March of 2020. Our investigation took some time. His crimes unfolded over the course of, if I'm not mistaken, close to 3 years. So again, it's not one of those where we got a singular phone call and it was immediate and apparent, but this is historically recreating these crimes. Excuse me one second. Once it became apparent, when he was questioned and he knew he was the target of this investigation and he got a sense of what we knew, he resigned from his job as a police officer, and that was in March of this past year, of 2024, excuse me. Apologies. Yeah, yes. Yeah, he had already been, I don't believe at that point he was still working at Yardley Borough. Towards the end of the, our investigation, he was only employed at Langhorne Borough.
Sorry, he resigned in March of 2025 or 2024?
October, excuse me. If I said March, I meant to say October. I'm not certain what I said. Yes, correct.
And real quick with the victim, once she learned that you guys were investigating, I mean, did she believe that she was being wronged, and maybe she...
I think it became apparent to her, and that's what's, so devastating on so many levels, and oftentimes too with some of our seniors being victimized, it goes underreported, if reported at all, because of the shame component, and she has no reason to be ashamed. He was very calculated and very charismatic. Thank you. Have a good day.